Scuba diving without a buddy. I mean, who would do such a thing? All through our dive training, we're taught to dive with a buddy, never leave their side. We're taught how to share air, we're taught how to communicate with hand signals. But is there an alternative way to dive? Let's find out. Hi guys, a very warm welcome back to the channel and a very happy new year to you. I hope you all had great Christmases, great new year, and I hope you got lots of fabulous diving lined up for 2024. Now, if you saw the recent update video that I posted around Christmas time, you will have seen that I was about to undertake a course very special to me with the fabulous team over at Wraysbury Diving. Now, you can probably tell from the title of this video that course is all about solo diving, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So why the SDI Solo Diver Course? Well, for me, from a personal perspective, I quite like to be in the water, reviewing products, doing this type of vlogs and review videos for you guys. In the past, I've been really fortunate enough to get away quite often overseas and dive regularly with the same buddy. These days, however, I'm a little bit short on dive buddies, and well, to be honest with you, it's quite boring for a buddy to come along with me, while I'm just reviewing products. I'm just talking to camera quite often, and quite often when I'm underwater, I'm really sort of filming the dive computer or a specific bit of kit. So being able to dive on my own was something that I was quite interested in being able to do. I did actually look into various courses that were available, and to be honest with you, most of the dive agencies offer something similar that claim to allow you to dive on your own. However, through my research, I found a few anomalies. For example, PADI will teach you a self-reliant diver course if you're over 18 and you've logged 100 dives. SSI will teach you their independent diver course if you're over 18 and have logged over 75 open water dives, along with completion of a number of speciality courses. However, what I did discover with both PADI and SSI is that because they're not called a solo diver course, or the word solo isn't in the title, that quite a lot of dive centres won't actually acknowledge them in allowing you to dive alone, which kind of defeats the object of the course. I did look into BZAC, and I did note that they reference a self-reliant diver being part of a general scuba diving teaching course, but I couldn't find a specific, or I couldn't find an independent standalone course through BZAC which would allow me to go solo diving. If I've got that wrong, and if anyone out there has done a solo diving course through BZAC, then please drop it in the comments below. I'd love to find it. I did look. I felt like I looked quite deep, but I just couldn't find it. Like I say, there was a reference to, teaching diving to an individual to make them self-reliant on a dive, but it wasn't a independent, standalone, solo or self-reliant diving course. But like I say, if I've got that wrong, then do let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a look otherwise. The SDI Solo Diver Course, from what I can understand, is the only true solo diver course which is available. But let me make one thing perfectly clear from the outset. Even if you've got this qualification, it doesn't mean that you can rock up to any dive centre and go solo diving. Lots of dive centres do not permit solo diving. In fact, there are a number of dive centres that will happily teach you this SDI Solo Diver Course qualification, but will not allow you to dive there on your own. For example, I understand that the guys up at Stony Cove will happily teach you the course, but due to the depths that are available and it being an inland lake and quite poor visibility at times, they won't permit you to dive there on your own. Wraysbury, however, is an absolutely perfect location, 13 to 40 metres deep at its maximum, and it's just the perfect place to dive if you have the solo diver course. They'll happily permit it there. So I hear you ask, why do I want to do the solo diver course if I can't use it everywhere that I went to dive? Well, you know what? I'd actually recommend the course for anyone, even if you plan to dive on your own or never dive on your own. Why is that? Well, the fundamentals of the course, they teach you about redundancy, and they teach you to act in a calm and sort of thought-provoking manner in the event of an emergency or a major malfunction. I'll give you 3 examples. Let's say example number 1, you head out to the Red Sea on a liveaboard. You're an experienced diver and the boat buddies you with a newly qualified diver who doesn't have a lot of experience. Or let's say example number 2, you are a parent who's got lots of dives under your belt and your teenage child has just learnt to dive and you're going out on a buddy dive with your teenage child. Or let's say you and your partner have a regular dive experience, but you're the experienced diver and your buddy isn't quite as, confident. Let's say your buddy's not quite as confident as you, regardless of experience. If you had a major malfunction, if your primary air source went down, if a piece of equipment went at depth and you needed someone to step in to save your life, out of those 3 examples that I've given you, would you feel comfortable that the new diver, the teenage child, or the nervous buddy would be there to save your life? You know what, if the answer is no, or if the answer is you're not sure, then you are a prime candidate to undertake the SDI Solo Diver Course. Even if you never plan to dive on your own, it's absolutely fantastic to have. Now, I just mentioned the word redundancy. Even before I started this course, even before I started to look at the coursework, in fact, I already had a small inkling in my head of what might be included. I did some technical qualifications back in 2017. I did my Tech 40, 45 and 50 with the brilliant team down at Blue Ocean Diving down in Maidstone in Kent. And I remember that the technical diving course, it kind of turned a lot of what I thought I knew about scuba diving on its head. For example, you don't dive as a buddy pair in tech diving, you dive as a tech team. If you've racked up some deco during the dive, once you've cleared that deco on your safety stop, you as an individual exit the water. You don't stay and wait for your technical team's computers to clear. So there was already an element of being self-reliant in some of the diving that I've done. But it was actually the redundancy which made me feel more comfortable with the course. Having a redundant air source is something that I'm familiar with. With technical diving, you dive the rule of thirds, and that's exactly the same with the SDI Solo Diver Course. You dive with the rule of thirds, and I'm talking about with your air. By rule of thirds, I'm talking about a third of your air is used for your runtime out on the dive, a third of your air is used for the runtime back, and then you exit with a third in reserve. And that reserve is really if we have an incident, an emergency, or some kind of situation where we need to use it to save our lives. If you think about a recreational diver, generally when you get to 50 or 60 bar, that's when we head up to 5 meters and we do a safety stop for 3 minutes at 5 meters and we exit the water with 50 bar in our tanks. That is your reserve, that's your safety. So it's exactly the same thing, but we do a rule of thirds. So third out, third back, exit the water with a third in reserve. Then there's the redundant equipment. Now, I always dive with 2 dive computers. I always have done ever since I had a major malfunction with a dive computer many years ago. Other than your primary air source, it's the one thing that's keeping you alive underwater. You also need to consider other equipment, quite similar to technical diving actually. The Solo Diver Course, it teaches you to carry a redundant mask, a redundant reel, a redundant DSMB. It also teaches you to carry extra knives or a wire cutter in the case of an entanglement where you need some form of device to cut it. And it does actually recommend carrying 2. If you've got one attached to you and you're diving on your own and your entanglement doesn't allow you to get to that, then it's kind of pointless having it. So yeah, there's no special equipment that you need for the Solo Diver Course, you just need to have extra of what you already have. So how did I find the Solo Diver Course? Well, ironically, the academic part of the course and the tasks that I had to complete underwater as part of the course, they weren't the issue at all. Ironically for me, it was diving in the dry suit. It's something that I'm just not used to. I've done close to 800 dives. I did my dry suit course only in the summer of 2021. I haven't used my dry suit since. Until I rocked up to do my course. Now, I tried to be sensible. I did actually book a day of diving, 2 dives, in with the guys at Wraysbury, just to get a little bit of orientation for Wraysbury Lake, but also to give me a chance to do 2 dives in a dry suit, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done any diving since I did my course. I would have liked to have been a little bit more comfortable in a dry suit before I did the course. But the course itself, I found fine. It was just driving in the dive suit that let me down, and I will explain why. The SDI Solo Diver Course consists of 2 instructor-led dives and a 3rd dive, which is essentially your first solo dive on your own. Now, during the 2 instructor-led dives, you need to be able to demonstrate a number of different skills. They are removing your mask and replacing it with redundant, switching from your primary air source to your redundant air source, taking a compass, heading from a fixed point, heading out and coming back on a compass heading to find your way back, and then deploying a DSMB without any variation in your depth at all. Now, the mask switching and the air switching, absolutely not a problem for me. My first compass heading, it went a little bit skill with. I'm not used to diving in a lake with short visibility. And I think it's fair to say that when you're a fair weather diver like me, you're not used to using a compass very often. I felt like I headed straight out on the compass bearing, and when I came back, I came back to a slightly different point that I should have done. But I did try it again on the second time. I went out and I came back short visibility and maybe not used to using a compass all the time underwater, but that went fine in the end. Ironically, despite deploying literally hundreds of SMBs in my time as a diver, it was the one thing that let me down in a dry suit. The first time I sent it up, I dropped 2 meters, and then the second time I tried that task, I was around about sort of 6-7 meters, and I sent the SMB up, and then because of the air that was in my dry suit and I wasn't used to managing the air in a dry suit, I then went up a little bit, and then before I knew it, I was approaching the surface. And it was quite frustrating because the 2 instructor-led dives had gone really well, I felt, for me, and it was just the one thing that let me down was the DSMB. The requirement was to literally not leave, when you're told to deploy your SMB, look at your depth and stay at that depth and while you send the SMB up. As I say, the first one I dropped a couple of meters, and the second one I rose a couple of meters before heading towards service. So yeah, we called it a day after day 2. I was a little bit annoyed with myself. We left it a few days, and I kind of went away and actually sort of thought about the whole process of being in a dry suit. I'd only done, including my course, I'd only done 3 dives, if you like, on the first day of the course. So I had took myself away, thought about things, and then went back. Actually, I went back on New Year's Eve, the 31st of December last week, and I redid that dive. Pleased to say that I nailed the SMB deployment, set a fixed depth, and didn't rise or sink, so that all went really, really well. My first planned dive as a solo diver, you know what, it felt actually quite weird. I planned where I wanted to go. As part of the dive plan that you have to give the dive centre at Wraysbury, you have to tell them what you plan to take, what time you're going to enter the water, what time you're going to exit the water, and what time you intend to be back, to tell them you're out of the water. I planned the dive, I planned the route that I wanted to take. I somehow managed to miss the fuselage of the 737 aeroplane, which was seen in all of my training dives with the instructor. How I missed that, I know visibility was about 3 meters, but how I missed it, I do not know. But yeah, on the way back, I set up my SMB as a solo diver, absolutely no problem. Came back, exited the water, but I found it was just a really weird sensation. It was a weird sensation being under the water on your own, but knowing you're on your own. Now, there's lots of times I've dived with a buddy, and I'm sure there's lots of you that have dived with a buddy, and at some point in the dive, you've separated, you're looking at different things, especially if you're a photographer or you're a videographer, or your buddy's gone round a corner, or you're in a drift. There's times when you might not be as close to your buddy as you should be. However, this is the first dive that I've done where I know I'm on my own. And even though I'm only in sort of 10 metres of water, it was still quite a weird and quite exhilarating sensation. Knowing that if anything happened, I would hopefully stay calm enough to deal with it. But yeah, that was the course went absolutely great. I mean, I feel like a much better diver from it. But yeah, it was that really weird sensation of yeah, being on your own for the first time, I guess. So there you go, I'm now a fully fledged solo diver, and I do plan to make much more use of it. Would I recommend the course to divers? 1,000,000% I would, not 100%, 1,000,000% I would recommend it. Even if you don't intend to solo dive, even if you don't want to solo dive, I'd highly recommend the course, because it just teaches you to act in a much more calm and thought-provoking manner in the event of an emergency. And dare I say, it might actually make you a better diver. Definitely for me, definitely from a dry suit perspective, I've done 7 dives in a dry suit, including the dive that I did on my dry suit course. And already I feel like a much better diver because of the course, having to demonstrate the skills that I've had to do in shallower water, in water with low vis. Yeah, definitely recommend it. Definitely look into it if you dive with a buddy which is less experienced, or you quite often head out to dive trips on your own and you're not familiar with the buddy that you might be diving with. If you're within reach of Wraysbury, then do go and check these guys out. They will deliver a first-class training experience for you with a great facility to do it at. They teach multi-agency, so they will make sure that you get the dive course that is right for you. If it's the Solo Diver course, go and check them out. You will not find better. What I was really impressed with, and I didn't tell them this at the time, Mark Bruce was my instructor. Mark was really clear before the dive that he wanted me to send the SMB up from the depth that he told me to send it up at. Now, it would have been quite easy for Mark to say, we can see you've done hundreds of dives and we know you can send up an SMB, so therefore you've passed the course. But because I dropped a metre or two on the first dive, Mark was quite specific that I needed to redo it. And then I think when I redid it, I was so conscious that I didn't want to sink, I then rose. So yeah, going back for the third time, I was a little bit like, oh God, I think I overthought it too much. But yeah, I was really impressed that Mark was really specific about what he wanted, and didn't just sort of pass me because he could see that I could do it. I really like that. If you're a regular Wraysbury user, then look out for me. I do plan to be there a lot more often going forwards. Please do come and say hi. If you see me there, it'd be great to meet some of you in person. That's it from me, guys. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you've got any comments or questions, then add them down below. If you found this video useful or you've liked it, then you know what, click on that little like button, click on that subscribe button. It really does mean the world to me, and it's great to have your support. Keep an eye out, I've got loads of cool videos coming up soon. So yeah, for now, thanks for watching, cheers, happy diving, and I'll speak to you soon.